Hello everybody, today I'm going to tell you something about a story written by Dylan Thomas, which is a story of the heritage of words in grade 12. Here the story is written by Dylan Thomas and it is told it is narrated by a small boy, and he talks about the adult's world from his own perspective. In this video I'm going to talk about the characters. I'll talk about the characters mainly, then summary, the short summary of this story, analysis and the themes, and important questions. So before we go through this story, firstly let me tell you that this story is not a proper, because you see the story has no proper starting and this is just a jumble of people. There are no events mentioned in the sequential order, so that we can say that this is not a proper story and it is a jumble of people. And I'll justify this. How is this a jumble of people? So very firstly, talk about the characters. The boy is a narrator. The boy here is the narrator of the story, and Dylan Thomas is another character. He's the narrator's uncle, and similarly Mrs. Thomas, Sarah, she's also called Sarah, narrator's aunt, says Will Sentry. Will Sentry is friend of Mr. Thomas, and Mr. Benjamin Franklin, or Mr. Franklin, he's a treasurer of their outing group. Bob the Fiddle was the old treasurer who drank or who spent the money that was collected for the outing, and later on this Mr. Franklin was assigned the role of treasurer. Similarly, Mr. Weasley is also one of the members of outing. Noah Boyne is also another member of outing. Enos Davis is another member. Old O. Jones, that is an old man also, and Mr. Cadwallader is another member. So all these members except Mrs. Thomas, who were going for an outing, and they planned to go to Portugal, that is one of the cities of South Wales. So here, after the character is case, let us move towards the summary. As this is not a proper story, it's really difficult for the readers to identify the message that the narrator or that the writer intends to deliver. So that I have divided into different episodes. Let us start with the first episode. In the first episode, there is the description of narrators, or the narrator describes his uncle and aunt simply, and while describing uncle and aunt, he says that the couple of his uncle and aunt is mismatching, because uncle is so big like an old buffalo and his aunt is so small. You see, sometimes she had to be over the table. She had to climb over the table. She used to be on the table when she had to punish the uncle there, or the narrator's uncle. She often used to beat her wife with the China dog. So in this way, the narrator says that even though that was his aunt, he didn't really like, or he didn't really want to call her aunt. Might be he thought that the couple was mismatching, or the aunt was not suitable for his uncle, so he says that he never called her aunt. And this is simply what the poet talks about, the description or the couple of his uncle and aunt. And in the second episode, the narrator says that there some people got together and they talked about their annual outing, and they planned to go to Portugal, a town in the south coast of Wales. And there there were different team members. There was Mr. Benjamin Franklin, who was the leader also. He was the exactly, Dylan Thomas was the leader, and Mr. Benjamin Franklin was that treasurer who had to set up the plan also, and who had to manage everything there, collecting money, managing other things. So this was his role, and there were so many other people. Mr. Weasley, Noah Boyne, Will Sentry came together there, and they twist tobacco, they enjoyed the drinks there, and they were, Mr. Benjamin Franklin said that he had collected money for the Curry Bank. Curry Bank is a small vehicle that is the vehicle mostly used in the city areas, and they had to go to Portugal on the Curry Bank there. So this is how they were planning to go to the Portugal, and every member was interested to go there, as this was their annual planning or annual outing. And in this way, the narrator talks about the planning to Portugal. And in the third episode, it's about the preparation of planning, and the group of narrator, the members of the group of outing, or the members of the outing, they decided to go to Portugal on coming Saturday, and they were getting ready for everything. Mr. Franklin said to Dylan Thomas that he had managed everything. He had bought so many things, or the necessary things like drinks and other things for the outing. He says that Mr. Franklin came with a list of the members going on outing. He reported that to Mr. Thomas. Everybody got satisfied, and the plan was approved. It was decided that they would go on the outing on coming Saturday, as I told you already. Similarly, in the fourth episode, the narrator says that the narrator again talks about his uncle and aunt. Narrator's aunt, when she found that Mr. Thomas was going for outing, she didn't really like it. When Sarah heard that Mr. Thomas was going on an outing, she didn't like it, and she gave him option to choose one between herself and outing. But quite surprisingly, Mr. Thomas chose the latter, even though Mr. Thomas liked his wife very much. But you see, Mr. Thomas raised her onto a chair and got punishment from her also, as he was doing this, as he had been doing that for a long time. Sarah threatened that if Mr. Thomas will choose the second option, or will choose for outing, she would go to her mother's house on Saturday. So finally, Mr. Thomas chose the second option, or he chose the outing, and Sarah went to her mother's house on Saturday, leaving the required instruction in a note like every year. And on her note, she says that she has kept something in the kitchen. There are some eggs in the pantry, so that is a place in the kitchen, and take your boots off before you go to the bed. So there was the instruction given by Sarah to her husband. This shows how much love is there between the two couples. So even though the narrator's uncle, or Mr. Thomas, loved his wife, he was interested to go to the outing. This is how the narrator talks about the relationship between his uncle and aunt. And finally, in the next episode, the narrator talks about the execution of plan, or how did they go there. The journey started there, and when the journey started, the final part of this, this is the final part, and there were many people to be together there. And Mr. Thomas also decided to take his nephew with him because nobody was there in the house, and the other members didn't like but they soon forgot it as they wanted to start at the right time for the Portugal. But when they left the village and reached a bit farther, they found one of the members who was missing. That was Ojones. And again they had to get back. They had to return back to village to take him. But one of the members didn't like him, or didn't like the way they got back. That was Mr. Weasley. Mr. Weasley didn't like that. But when they set off again, Mr. Weasley remembered that he had forgotten his teeth at home. Previously, he didn't like the way they were getting back. But later on, he was telling that I remember my teeth in the mantelpiece there, so I need to go there. He was telling that. He requested the members to go back to the village, but this time no one listened to him as they were already late to their destination. On the way, they stopped at every pub, every restaurant, and they started drinking alcohol there. They asked the narrator to look after the curry bank and other members, as the narrator was young. The narrator was child. He was not allowed to enter the pub, or he was not allowed to drink alcohol. So other members, they drank a lot. They drank till the late afternoon, and the whole afternoon passed in drinking, and at dark they reached to a stream. And when they were again moving ahead after drinking in the many pubs there, they swam in the river and forgot that they had to reach Portugal. Actually, they could not reach the place they had aimed for and return home from the midway. And on the way, you see, some of them thought that why to go to Portugal. They didn't remember that they had to go to the Portugal, although they were destined, or they were trying to go to the Portugal. When they saw the river, when they found the river on the way, they forgot everything there. And not only by the river, they were already entangled with the drinks, with the bars, with the girls in the bar. They were dancing with the girls. So they could not reach their destination, and they could not go to Portugal. And finally, they had to get back to their homes without going to Portugal. So that altogether there were 30 drunkards, or the 30 members. Thus the 30 drunkards decided to assemble into a field and drank more. By this time the boy was so tired and he fell asleep. He slept nearby his uncle and at the side of his uncle's waistcoat. So in this way the story ends. This is really humorous story, as it is kept under satire and humor. The story ends by showing how in our day-to-day life, or how the adults in their day-to-day life, they run after immediate amusements, instant gains, and enjoyment, or their glamour. The 30 men are the members of outing. They didn't reach their destination they had aimed for, as they didn't realize the value of time. They didn't review their goal also, objective also. So that made the narrator, or that made the small boy think that how the grown-ups always dictate the children about the right and wrong, but they don't do it on their own self there. This is how the story ends. Let me talk about the major themes of the analysis of the poem. The one is of course humor and satire. In this story, the narrator makes some humors of his uncle and aunt. The uncle is just like that buffalo, he says that, and aunt is so small, like a cat, that he didn't want to call his aunt as aunt. And next is how in our day-to-day life we run after glamour, immediate gains, and amusements. Next, so this is how the 30 adults they didn't go to the Portugal. Rather, they got entangled with their immediate amusements. They enjoyed drinking alcohol, getting into the pubs there. And third theme is that is adults' world from child's perspective. The narrator, he found that the adults, they only know how to dictate their children, but they don't fulfill their own responsibilities, or they are not working there, or they don't work according to their plan. Now let me talk about the important questions. One of the most important questions is, do you think that a story is not a story proper but a jumble of various people? Give reasons for your answers. So here I haven't written the complete answer. Here I just want to give you the clues. Why is this not a story proper? Or why is this a jumble of various people? You can see the clues here, and with the help of clues you can write this into different paragraphs. Basically, while writing, you need to write into the 3 paragraphs: introduction, body, and conclusion. So not proper beginning. This is not proper beginning. It means events don't occur, or the writer or the narrator starts directly with describing his uncle and aunts. So this is not a proper beginning. Events don't occur in the sequential order. The events of the story, they are not presented, or they are not shown in the sequential order. They come haphazardly, right? So when one person starts talking, immediately another person interrupts, and the narrator goes on telling us about something different. So events don't occur in the sequential order. Another person starts conversation even though the previous doesn't finish or hasn't finished the talk. So the narrator talks about his uncle and aunt, shift into his uncle's friends, their plan to outing, or again talks about his uncle and aunt, and many people have talked in this story in a very haphazard way. In this way, we can say that the story is not a proper but a jumble of many people, various people, a jumble of 30 people who were destined to go to Portugal, even though they didn't reach their destination, even though they didn't go to Portugal. This is how this story is a jumble of people, a jumble of many people. Similarly, the second question here I have is, the plan was to go to Portugal for the outing. Did they reach there? Why? The narrator's uncle and his friends didn't reach Portugal. Here, the narrator, by the way, he was not trying to go to Portugal, but his uncle forced him, or his uncle took him to Portugal. And according to their plan, they had to go to Portugal, or they had to reach Portugal, but they didn't reach Portugal according to their plan, because the adults didn't concentrate on their plan. Rather, they got entangled with glamour, immediate gains, and amusements, means entertainment. They entered the pub, they started drinking alcohol. Instead of sticking to their goal or plan, they entered the pub, enjoyed drinks, and relaxed on their way. So they forgot that they had to go to Portugal. They didn't review their goal, they didn't review their objective, so they could not reach Portugal, and they got back home without fulfilling or without succeeding their plan. This is how the story shows how people fail to achieve their objectives when they don't review their goals and get busy with instant pleasure. This is all about the story called A Story, written by Dylan Thomas. All in all, the story talks about how do adults behave, or what is the character, or what characters do some adults show. This is presented by the children's, or by the child's perspective, and the most important message, or the most important theme that the story wants to provide us is that people fail to achieve their objectives when they don't review their goal, when they don't concentrate on their plan. This is how the story talks about. Thank you. So if you haven't understood anything, or if you have any queries about this video, you can comment below on this video. Thank you everybody.